Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the live training today. And I'm super excited as always, but even more excited because I decided to get my hair cut and the guy did it completely different to how I wanted. So hopefully you guys can relate to when that happens, right? And today I wanted to bring you guys a different training. I wanted to do something a little bit fun, a little bit different, but also to give you guys the confidence. So really quickly, with you guys who are on right now, just give me a quick head count. How many of you guys have already launched your podcast? How many of you guys are in the process of launching your podcast? Just give me a bit of a heads up down below. Let me know where you guys are up to, just so I'm going to help you guys to figure this out. And what I want to talk about today is something pretty cool. I want to talk to you guys about the concept and the possibilities of how you can actually fill your podcast guest schedule for a whole year, like how you can get people lined up for your podcast for a full year in advance. So guys, just let me know, can you hear me okay? And I'm just making sure that you guys can hear and the sound is coming through okay. So let me know down below. But what we're going to be talking about is a really simple thing. How do you fill your podcast schedule for a year? And what we're going to talk about is something kind of particular. We're going to be talking about how do you actually fill it with dream clients. So how many of you guys who are watching right now, how many of you guys know about the podcast closing technique? How many of you guys know about podcast closing? And some of you guys who are here don't understand exactly what that is yet. But let me just draw a really quick idea behind what the whole podcast closing spectacle is based from. So imagine this right here is your podcast, right? At the very top here, you've got your dream guests. So you've got your dream customers, and they're at the top. And these are people who you want to work with inside of your business, and you want to get them actually interviewing on the podcast. So here's your little podcast microphone, and you want to be getting people who are going to be coming and interviewing on your podcast. So the first thing you want to do is you want to have dream guests that are speaking to you every single day on the podcast. The next step, as you go to the level down, is you want to be actually building a relationship, right? So the relationship is going to be the second part that you're going to do. So you're going to be interviewing people and you're going to be building up that relationship. You're going to be able to connect with them and basically become friends, right? So we're going to put a little smiley face there because we're creating friends. And then on the next level down, we're going to make them an offer. And when we make them that offer, right at the bottom here is where we make that cash. And the process is super simple, but basically what you guys are going to be doing with the podcast closing strategy that we've been talking about is you are going to fill your schedule and your podcast with people that are your perfect clients. So if you sell to orthodontists, then you want to be speaking to orthodontists on your podcast that are a good fit for your business. If you are wanting to speak to people who are retired, then that is the people you would speak to at the top. If I wanted to speak to people, I'd be speaking to entrepreneurs who wanted to create a mass movement, and those would be the people that I would be speaking to. So let me grab this microphone so I can make sure you guys can hear me nice and clearly. And what I wanted to do basically for today is to show you guys how you can actually fill your schedule with these people. Wouldn't that be cool? So how do you make sure that you're always speaking to your dream customers so that you can build a relationship, so that you can make them an offer? Now, just to kind of explain how this concept works on a bit of a deeper level, let me just paint a picture for you really quickly. So how many of you guys have got an offer that is over $1,000? Or how much is your offer that you make to people? So let me know down in the comments. Hey, Annie, super happy to have you here. But what I want to understand here really quickly is how this process is going to work. So let's say you have a podcast and you have an offer that is $1,000, okay? You have $1,000 offer and you're basically going to get people to buy that, right? So what you want to do is you want to get your dream customer, your who, at the top. You want to go and do an interview with these people so that you can build that relationship. Then after the interview, you're going to make them an offer, and then you are going to sell them your 1K offer. And that's the process of what we talk about when we talk about podcast closing. Now, to give you an idea of kind of statistics and how many you are supposed to kind of do and how it gets kind of filtered down, one of the easiest ways to look at this is to think about, okay, well, how much money am I going to make based on how many interviews I do, right? So if you're going to interview, say, 5 people a week who are your dream customer, you'll usually expect to get about 10 of those people across the month to hear your offer. So you can interview 20 people, 10 of them are going to check out your offer, and you'll get between probably 2 to 5 of them who are going to say yes. So the idea behind this is super, super simple. If you're going to be able to interview 20 people a month, you're going to get usually between 2 to 5 sales, which means you can make between $2,000 and $5,000 a month if you're selling a $1,000 offer. So just give me an example, guys, in the comments. You feel important. I love that, Annie. Give me an example just in the comments down below, what kind of business you have and what kind of offer you have. So I'll give you an example for Gina. Gina runs an events company, and she does events for people and entrepreneurs. So she's going to go and interview her dream customer. She's going to go and interview a bunch of people who are entrepreneurs, females who are creating movements. She's going to interview them to build amazing relationships. And at the end of her sort of 40-minute to an hour interview, she's going to follow up with them and make an offer. She can sometimes do it on the interview. So they hit stop and hit record, and she'll say something like, wow, I actually heard you mention this. I don't know if you were interested, but I actually help entrepreneurs like you schedule events. I'd love to talk to you about how that might be a good idea. And she could make them an offer right there and then, or she could follow up with them a couple of days later, or a week later, whatever it might be. And then a week later say, hey, so I was listening back to the interview and I just wanted to say that I love what you're doing. And I had this great idea about how you could be running an event. So the idea is that you speak to your dream customer, you build a relationship, you make them an offer, and then a portion of those people that you make an offer to are going to say yes. So does that make sense? I wanted to, first of all, explain this process so you guys understand exactly what's going on, and you can understand how we're going to be going about making money with the podcast. Now, what we want to do in this process is that from a top level down, this makes a lot of sense, right? So, okay, it makes sense to speak to my dream customer. It makes sense that I can build a relationship, and it makes sense to make them an offer. But where a lot of people get stuck is they say, but how do I find that dream customer? What if my dream customer is an athlete and, you know, they don't hang out in athlete entrepreneur groups? So how am I going to go and identify them and find them, right? And then other people will say to me, well, Jamie, this is a cool idea, but you know, I work with eco entrepreneurs. How do I go and find these eco entrepreneurs? How do I make sure that I'm interviewing those people on the podcast? Sometimes I might interview the wrong person and then I can't make them an offer because they're not my dream customer. So the question becomes, well, if I'm going to fill my podcast schedule with interviews, how do I make sure that I'm interviewing the right person that's going to lead me to making a sale that's going to make sense? Is that the right question for you guys? So how many of you guys understand this process? So we're going to speak to our dream customer, we're going to build a relationship, and we're going to make them an offer. Very, very simple, right? But how many of you get stuck on this top part? Like, how do I find this dream customer? Like, where are they? Where do they pop up? This is kind of an interesting thing that people are struggling with. And guys, let me know down below in the comments if you've got questions, if there's any other things that you get stuck on in this process, and please let me know. So let's have a look. So Annie's saying, she says, I know a marketing company that pays me $2,000 for every Spanish speaking business owner that signs with them. Wow, that's an amazing affiliate offer. So my offer is an interview with a marketing agency director that specializes on scaling. Cool. I love that. Really, really cool in terms of the offer. So just to clarify, if you guys are watching right now, on this training today, I'm going to be showing how you can fill your podcast schedule for a year, but not just with any particular person. I'm going to show you how you can fill your podcast schedule with your dream customers, how you can interview these dream customers that you want to spend time with and actually turn them into people that can build a relationship so that you can make them an offer so that you can sell something. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So I'm hoping you guys get the gist of that. And on this next section, I'm going to show you how you can actually do that. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, all right, well, what is my dream customer? How do I identify a dream customer? So you first have to make a little checklist of exactly who you want to be speaking to. So my number one piece of advice with this is that when you're trying to outline your dream customer, and we're going to put dream up the top here so you guys know, make a little checklist of pieces that are involved. So the first thing that you want to do with your checklist is you want to have a very clear idea of kind of what business they're in, right? What is their profession or what is their business? That's the very first thing. And then you also want to think about what characterizing trait do you want them to have? So a trait can be different for different people. So for example, for Gina, who wants to serve online females who are building amazing online businesses, a trait for them might be that they have to be building a community, right? A trait for me might be that they want to build a mass movement. A trait for Annie might be that they need to be a Spanish speaking person. So think about what individual traits does your dream customer have to have? What profession are they in? And then the final thing you want to have is what can you have that identifies them? What is their identity? And this is going to be important for you to be able to pick these people out. So, for example, if you are wanting to work with people who are eco warriors, people who love the economy, not the economy, who love the environment, right? Those are going to be people that you're going to be able to identify because you're going to see them popping around. Okay, they're going to be the people that care about the environment. They're going to be the people who are all about zero plastic and all of that kind of stuff. So the first thing you want to do when you're trying to identify where your dream customer is you have to figure out what these identifiable traits are. And then what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how can we flush these people out. So just to explain really quickly, when I was first looking and trying to find my dream customers online, I looked all over the place. I was trying to find entrepreneurs who were interested in creating mass movements. And the problem was I didn't know where to look. I tried to look in Facebook groups. I tried to look in other places. I tried to look all over the place. And it was really difficult for me to say where these customers were hanging out. And the problem was that the kind of entrepreneurs that I wanted to work with, they were in these online communities, but they were kind of hidden among the masses. How many of you guys have ever found that? You're trying to find a specific person and they're kind of hidden in the sea of these different people. So what you have to be is you have to be like a fisherman, right? So imagine that a Facebook group, for example, is a place that you want to go, and you have to think of the Facebook group as a massive lake. And what you are is you're going to be throwing in your fishing rod with different hooks on the end of it to try and pull in your particular types of customers, right? So maybe the lake is full of entrepreneurs and there's a whole bunch of different entrepreneurs in there. Think of the entrepreneurs like fish, but you don't want to attract certain types of entrepreneurs. You want to attract a very specific type. So you're going to need to have what? You're going to have a specific type of bait, right? A certain type of bait is going to attract your dream customer or your dream fish to come towards you. So just to demonstrate and to give you guys an idea, what you need to think of these as is almost like fishing bait and fishing lures. So if you have a big lake and there's all of these fish that are going to be, oh God, let me try and draw a picture of a fish. This is going to be interesting, huh? So there's all of these fish that are inside this lake. The fish are all of your different entrepreneurs. And what you have to do is you have to know how you can, as a fisherman, basically throw in your reel. Okay, so this is your fishing rod. And what bait can you have on the end of that that is going to draw your dream customer to you? And the process is not as complicated as you guys would think. All you really need to do is you need to know how you can get these people to put their hands up. So can you guys give me any examples? What would you do if you were to go into a big lake, a big Facebook group like this, and you wanted to attract a certain type of customer? What ways could you do it? Give me some examples down in the comments, and let's think about how we can attract these different types of people. So this lake is basically a Facebook group, okay? And what we want to figure out is, okay, how can we attract these different people actually to see our stuff? All right, so let me know what ideas you've got. How can we use bait to attract your dream customer? So one of the easiest ways you guys can do this is actually by sharing specific posts. And what you can do is you can call out your dream customer based on one of these three things. So if they have a particular trait, so let's say they are Spanish speaking, like Annie just mentioned, okay? If you're looking for Spanish speaking fish or entrepreneurs in this big Facebook group, then what kind of bait could you use? Well, you could actually throw out a post in Spanish, right? You could put a Spanish post in there saying something like in Spanish saying, hey, where are my Spanish entrepreneurs? And if you put it in the Spanish language, it's going to attract those types of people to the post. Does that make sense? Now, if you wanted to go and find all of the people that were eco-focused, so maybe they care about the environment, you could put out a post that says, where are my eco-warrior entrepreneurs? All right. And then you could share a value post about something related to it. And your goal when you're putting out this bait is very, very simple. All you want to do is you want these entrepreneurs or these specific types of people that you're looking for, you want them to put their hand up and you want them to comment. And what this is going to allow you to do is this is going to allow you to start identifying who are your dream customers in these big communities. And going back to what we talked about earlier, the goal of what the training is today is to show you how you can fill your schedule on your podcast with your dream customers. And the first step is to get them to actually put their hand up and to comment and engage inside of these communities. So, for example, there's going to be a ton of dream customers inside specific places, and you just need to get them to put out your hand. Now, what other places can you find them? Well, if they're not inside a Facebook group, are they on an Instagram hashtag, right? So could you go into an Instagram hashtag and could you put a post in there calling out the specific type of audience? Or could you go into a LinkedIn hashtag? Or could you go onto another platform's hashtag and go and find people that are going to put their hand up and they're going to engage? What that's going to tell you is that those are the people that are interested in that particular area. So Sherry, yeah, absolutely. Posting to create value and posting to identify who your dream customers are. Now, the next step is really easy. The next step of what you can do is actually start speaking to these people directly and saying, hey, so you're my dream customer, right? So I might reach out to an entrepreneur and I say, hey, what's going on? I'll send them a voice memo and I'll say, hey, my name's Jamie. I run the Entrepreneur Junkie Movement podcast. And I love the fact that you are a Spanish speaking entrepreneur and I would love to bring you on my show. Would that be cool? And we can just actually ask them the question to be featured onto our podcast. So the first step is to identify what are these traits, what are the professions, and what are the identities of our dream customer. Because if you can identify these three levels, what you can start to do is you can start to use bait posts to call out those particular things. So for example, if you want to go and target someone who is a dental hygienist, then you can say, hey, where are my dental hygienists, right? Calling out the profession. If you want to speak to someone who has, say, the trait of being a Spanish speaker or they care about the environment or something like that, you can call out a trait of them, right? Where are my funnel builders? Where are the people that are my athletes, right? Whatever that trait might be. And then you can also then go and do it around identity because a lot of people identify around particular things. So for example, when we talk about identity, we could talk about, Spanish speakers. What's some other examples? Can you guys give me some examples of an identity? We can talk to people about being a funnel hacker. We can talk to people about whatever their identity is of themselves. We can call them out specifically. So what these basically are different hooks that you guys can use as bait to draw in your dream customer. Is this making sense? You guys picking this up? So what we're talking about here is these are the three factors of our dream customer that you can use as bait to call them out. And all you need to do is you need to go to these big communities, whether it's a Facebook group, you could go to an Instagram hashtag, right? You could go give them a shout out on Instagram. You could go into LinkedIn. Okay. There's lots of these different places and think of them like ponds, literally a huge pond that your dream customer is congregating and hanging out in. So what we've done is we've identified a few different things. So I'm going to write this out on the next piece of paper here. We're identifying three main different things. The first thing we're looking at is what is the identity. So rather than identity, how can we call out our dream customer? So how do you call out your dream customer is the first thing. The second thing we're thinking about is where are they actually congregating? So where do they hang out? Where are these people online? Are they in Facebook groups? Are they in Instagram hashtags? Are they in LinkedIn? And then the third thing we want to do is we actually just want to reach out to them. So we want to actually drop in bait that's going to call them out based on their actual characteristics and their traits. So we're going to go and figure out what are the call out traits we can use for our dream customers. Where are those potential customers hanging out? And then what bait posts can we put in there that's going to make these people put their hand up? Now, once they've actually put their hand up, the next process is really easy, is that you just actually send them an audio message. And your audio message is super simple. And the audio message is simply, hey, my name's Jamie. I run a podcast. It's called This. I would love to interview you as an expert on this. I would love for you to come actually on my show so we can talk about your area of expertise. Don't worry if not, but I just thought it would be a good opportunity to reach out. So what we're doing here is we're basically creating a prospecting list. We're creating a list of dream customers that you could interview on your podcast. So if you imagine it again like a funnel, what we're doing is at the top, we're creating this list of dream customers. And you're basically going to be filtering and looking for people who would be a good fit for your business. So whatever your business is, and guys, let me know down in the comments now, because we've got quite a few guys on now. Let me know, what is your business and who is your dream customer? And we'll try and give you some practical examples of this. But how can you actually fill the top of your podcast prospecting funnel by actually having a list of people to reach out to? And what's cool about this is that you don't have to have a big list, but you could have 10 or 15 or 20 people that are your perfect dream customer because you've been able to identify these 4 things. And from there, it's really a case of you interviewing them and then just making them an offer. So guys, a number of you guys are sometimes wondering, okay, well, what can I do as bait posts? How can I get people to put up their hand and comment? And I'm going to give you some examples of this in just a second. So let's just see some of you guys. Let's see the comments. Let's have a look. So Sherry saying posting to create value. Jackie is saying ask specific questions related to your business. Yeah, 100%. Annie says, are you ready to scale? Could be an identity. Absolutely. If you're ready to scale, who are you is ready to scale? You have to be careful not to sound too salesy with that, Annie, because sometimes if you sound salesy, like, hey, who's ready to scale? It sounds like you might be trying to sell to them, but it's a really important thing to think about. So Jeremy is saying his identity is martial artist, teacher, business owner, right? So you could go into a group that you know your customers are in and do a bait post calling out, hey, where are my martial artists? I have a podcast and I want to hear about your stories, right? You could get a bunch of people to comment and to share about that. And then what you're going to do from there, Jeremy, is really simple, is you're just going to go through that list of everybody that put their hand up and commented, and you're going to do your own research, right? You're going to look at them. You're going to check out their website. You're going to see, could this person be a dream customer for my business? If they are a really good prospect, then you put them in the spreadsheet. You just have a little spreadsheet of all these people, and maybe you have some tick boxes, right? Does this person have what I need to be able to sell to them? Are they missing this part? Do they need this part, right? And you're creating this kind of list of, do they fit the category of what I want to put in there? So for example, if I was trying to speak to my dream customers, my question might be, do they already have a podcast? If they don't already have a podcast, that's a big tick because I can help them to have a podcast. If the next question might be, do they have an existing audience? Do they have a Facebook group or do they have the beginnings of a mass movement? If they do, it's a big tick, right? And then the next thing might be, are they actively seeking solutions, right? Are they talking about wanting a podcast? Is there anything that I've seen? Are they posting in podcast groups? If that's a tick, if I've got 3 big ticks next to that, then that is a very, very warm prospect for me because they have a need. They don't have the solution right now. And then they're showing an interest in what that's going to be. So in my little spreadsheet, I'm actually going to put a bunch of ticks next to that. So that is someone that I definitely want to interview on my podcast. Because again, remember guys, what we're going to do is we're going to fill our podcast with these dream prospects who we can build relationships with. And then on the bottom, we can make them an offer about our products or our services. So hopefully that's making sense. So Jeremy's saying, since I'm B2C to parents, could I use this strategy calls as Facebook Lives for 20, 30 minutes to help them with a pain point? Like do a demonstration value and follow up after enrollment. So Jeremy, the challenge here becomes, if you are wanting to do this for a B2C environment, the challenge becomes, can you actually interview people who are your dream customers? Chances are you probably can't, right? So what you want to do in that situation is you actually want to be interviewing people who have your dream customer in their audience. So I would go and find somebody who is already speaking to your dream customer, so you can interview them, build a relationship, and then on the back end, you're going to be able to speak to them and make them an offer to say, hey, I've got this great offer. I would love to put it out to your list. And that's the way that I would probably do that. So when you're searching, Jeremy, if you're B2C, you're going to be looking for people who fit your demographic. And it's going to be like, hey, who is currently serving martial artists, right? That's going to be what you're going to be calling out to. So instead of going into groups where maybe there are your dream customers hanging out, you have to figure out, okay, well, who has got my dream customer or already in their email list, and go after them that way. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. Thanks, Lindsay. I appreciate that. I just got my haircut the other day. So Annie says, I thought that earlier, looking like a millionaire. Thank you. Jamie, you're amazing. Okay, cool. Makes sense. Just tuning in, so I need to go back and listen. Yeah. So just to summarize what we've gone through so far, we're talking about how to fill your podcast schedule, but not just to fill it with anybody. How do you fill it with your dream customers? Okay. So what are we going to do with our podcast is we're going to take them through these steps. We're going to speak to the dream customer at the top, and we're going to get them to come on the podcast for an interview. There we're going to build a relationship. And then after we've had them on the podcast, we're going to make them an offer. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a dream customer specifically you're speaking to, or whether it's somebody that has your dream customer in their list, you're still going to make them an offer, right? When I spoke to Alex Elliott on my podcast, I wasn't selling her on a podcast. I was saying to her, I've got a great offer for your audience. We should collaborate and work together. And that's how we made an offer that worked, right? Does that make sense? So sometimes if you are selling to a wider audience, you might want to interview people who have your dream audience, not necessarily who are your dream customer. So something to think about. So this is the process we're going through. But one of the big questions people have is, well, how do I fill my podcast schedule? And how do I fill it for a year with a bunch of people that are my dream customers? So here's the process that I want you guys to go through. First of all, identify what are the 3 traits of your dream customer. What's their profession? What is a trait that they have? And what is an identity piece that they actually reflect on? So if it's an entrepreneur, that's their identity. If they are a stay-at-home mom, that's part of their identity, right? And what we're going to do is, once we know what these 3 things are, we're going to use that as bait to fish for our dream customers. So this is like a lake full of fish, but the lake is actually a Facebook group, and the fish is your dream customers. So what you're going to do is you're going to basically fish into that lake so that you can find your dream customers. And it doesn't matter if it's a Facebook group or if it's an Instagram hashtag or if it's LinkedIn, it's the same principle, right? The lake is just where your dream customers are congregating, and you're basically going to go and fish into that lake and use a certain type of bait to pull those people out. And all you want to do is you want them to just put their hand up and say, yes, I'm that kind of person. And that's why we want to focus on these 3 things. Because if you call somebody out on their identity or a trait they have or their specific profession, people are going to put up their hand and say, yes, I am that kind of person. And what's nice is once you're able to identify that and put out those posts, it's a really simple process. First of all, you're going to figure out what can you call out to attract your dream customer. Then you find out where they hang out online. Then you put in some bait so that those people put their hand up and say, yes, that's me. And then you're going to send them an audio message to say, hey, do you want to come on my podcast? Now, what we do to automate this process and to basically fill our whole podcast calendar for a year is, once you figure out how you can call out your dream customer, you go and you find the biggest group you can, the biggest ocean that your people are congregating in, and you drop a post. And the post can be super simple. It can be something like this. Hey guys, I've got a top 200 podcast, and we're looking for something guests to interview for the next year. Comment down below if you would love to be featured. And what you want that something to be is the call out point. Maybe you want to speak to mompreneurs. Maybe you want to speak to athlete entrepreneurs. Maybe you want to speak to martial artists. Whatever it is, whatever your call out is, that's what you want to put in that post. And doing that, you're going to be able to get a whole bunch of people are commenting, and then you can send them a bunch of messages and basically fill your calendar for your scheduling for a whole year. Remember, you don't have to do a lot. If you're publishing 1 episode a week, you only need 50 people to interview across a whole year. And you can do that from 1 post. Once I dropped one of these posts into a big community, and I got over 400 comments, over 400 people who wanted to be interviewed who fit my dream criteria. So what we did was we went through those 400 people and we found out who is a good fit, who's not a good fit. And then we made a kind of a short list, right? We went through and we said, what are the traits that these people have that we need for them to be a good guest for our show? And we were looking at, okay, do they have, do they already have a podcast? If they do, chances are maybe they're going to be a fit for what we're talking about, but maybe they won't, right? So we went through and we had these kind of 4 checklists inside of our spreadsheet to figure out, okay, who is going to be the best person for us to interview. So are you guys getting this? So the process is not that difficult. Really what you need to do is, first of all, think, how can I identify my dream customer? How can I make them put their hand up and say, that's me? How can I do it on scale? So how can I get a lot of people to do that? And then from that point there, how do I then get those people on an interview? And usually the easiest way is just to send them a voice memo to say, hey, why don't you come on the show? So here's some things to think about when it comes to actually refining your customer. So what you want to do is you kind of want to have 4 tick boxes. So these tick boxes are going to be, what do I need for them to be a 10 out of 10 customer? So think of these tick boxes as percentage, right? Tick box number 1 is going to be worth 25%. If they get 2 ticks, they are 50%. If they get 3 ticks, they're 75. And if they get all 4 ticks, then it's 100%. And what we're looking for, and you guys can put this in a spreadsheet, is we're looking for what do I need them to have for them to be the perfect customer for me to sell my product to. So for some of you, you might say, well, the first thing I need is they need to be an entrepreneur, right? They need to be a certain type of person. Maybe it's a B2B entrepreneur, maybe it's something. First of all, you have to think about what is it that defines my customer. So I'm going to do a checklist here based on what works in my business, and then you guys can hopefully come up with the same version for yourself. So the first thing that I need is I need somebody to be an entrepreneur. If they don't have a business, they have no business buying my course, right? So the first thing I want is, are they an entrepreneur? If they are an entrepreneur and they have a business, then they get their first tick. Now, the next thing I want to say is, okay, so what is the next thing that will define whether or not I should work with them or not? So the next thing I want to ask them is, do they actually want a podcast, or do they have a podcast already, right? If they don't want a podcast, they're probably not going to buy my podcast product. So what I need to do is I need to figure out, do they already have one or do they want one? And guess what? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, then they get a second tick. So this is looking like a pretty good prospect for me to sell my podcast programs to, right? They've got 2 ticks. The next thing I might want to ask is, well, okay, what is the next thing that's going to make them be very, very successful? So if they are a B2B entrepreneur, so if they sell a business to business product or service, then that is going to be another thing for me that makes them a very good customer. If they have a B2B type of business, then that's going to make them another great prospect for me. So another tick there. And then the last and final thing is going to be based on revenue, right? Are they doing at least 2K a month in revenue? That is going to be another factor which tells me that they're a great customer. Because the truth is, most people, if they aren't doing at least 2K of revenue, are going to have a hard time investing in a product or a program. Now, this is just for my example, guys, and this is what I would look for when I'm going to do a podcast interview with somebody if I was going to sell to them using podcast closing. And again, just to refresh you guys on what that looks like, if we've got a funnel here, the top of the funnel is going to be our dream customer, the who. Then we're going to interview them. So there's going to be the interview process. And then at the bottom, we're going to make them an offer. And that is going to be the process that we go through with our podcast. So what we're looking for here is we've got these 4 tick boxes that say to me, this is a perfect prospect. So what you guys want to do is kind of simple, really, is you want to basically have a system and a process to fill this spreadsheet with perfect prospects. And you guys don't need to do this yourself. You can get a VA to do it. Very, very easy. But what you're basically doing is on the back end, once you've got people to put their hand up and say, yes, I am this person, I've got this identified aspect, you then want to do a filtering process. And guess what you want to do? The people that tick all 4 of your boxes, those are going to be the people that you want to interview first, because they are going to be the most likely person to buy your product. So what you need to ask yourself is, what are these identifiable things that you need somebody to go through so that they could buy your product? So, you know, somebody like Chris Ward, one of my students, she only works with entrepreneurs that are doing at least $200,000 a year. So that is going to be one of her identifiable traits. What else? She only works with course creators. So course creators is going to be one of her identifiable aspects. What else? They need to actually have a team, right? More than one person. So that's another aspect for her. And finally, obviously, the first thing is they need to have a business in the first place. So can you guys see how by having just 4 identifiers of what is your dream prospect, that suddenly you're able to start just identifying from the people that you see whether they're going to be a good prospect or not? Now, how many of you guys know one of the easiest ways to get this information? So let's say we've got somebody who's interested. You've done the reach out. So you first of all identified who is the dream customer. Then you've gone and dropped into a Facebook group and you've put some bait out. They've bitten and you say, you know what? You look like somebody that I would like to interview. and then you've done the outreach and you've said, I want to interview you, right? So you sent them an audio message. What is the best way to now find out this information? Any guesses? How would you guys do it? So in my mind, there's two ways you can do it. You can either go out and do it manually. You can get a VA, or you can go and do it. You can go and research them, look on their website, find out if they're a good fit, look at their profile. And usually you'll be able to figure out at least 2 or 4 of these things just from an initial look. So maybe you're able to figure out if they're an entrepreneur, and you're able to figure out if they have a podcast just by looking. And maybe you might even be able to figure out if they're a B2B entrepreneur. But figuring out their revenue, that's going to be hard, right? Without being able to dig. Like, this isn't publicly accessible information. So one of the best ways that you guys can identify this is with a questionnaire. Very, very easy. So when you book somebody to come onto your podcast, it's really easy for you to get them to go through a 4-question entrepreneur. What are you, an entrepreneur, and what kind of entrepreneur are you? Do you currently have a podcast, or do you want to have a podcast? Are you a B2B or a B2C entrepreneur? Give them the option for another. How much revenue are you doing? 0 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 plus, right? And very quickly, with that simple questionnaire, you're able to identify these questions. Now, some of you might think, well, what if they don't want to answer that question, right? What if they don't want to tell me how much revenue they've done? Well, if they don't answer it, they don't get on the podcast, right? That's what they're trying to get. We're getting them to answer these questions so that they can come on the podcast. But what you can do is, when you write out these questions, is you can ask them in such a way which explains why you want that information. So if I was going to ask someone how much revenue they were doing before they came on my podcast, I might say in the question, what category of entrepreneur are you? Brackets, we ask this question so that our audience can understand our audience can understand what level you're currently at, to give them the best advice, right? You can give them a reason why you want to know that question. And there was a really great story about people cutting in line. I've told this story a few times. So there was a study done at a local post office, and the local post office, there was a huge queue out the door every single day when anybody wanted to mail anything anywhere. And what they did was that they did an experiment where they sent some people in, and they just tried to cut in the front of the line. And about 80 to 90% of the people who just tried to cut in without saying anything were kind of shooed away and weren't allowed to cut into the line. But what they found was that a whole bunch of other people, they actually went to cut in the line. We got them to explain why they wanted to do it. Hey, sorry, I need to cut in because my daughter's in the hospital and I need to be quick. I need to do it because my wife is pregnant and we need to take her to the hospital, right? Once they gave them a reason to cut in front, then people actually let them through. And they found it was like a 20-80 split. And what was the reason behind that? Because when you ask somebody a question, if you're able to explain the reason why you need to know that, or explain the reason behind it, people are a lot more willing to go and answer it. So if I said to you, tell me how much money you're doing right now, you might get defensive, right? Oh, I don't know if I want to tell you that. But what if I told you, hey, how much money are you doing right now? And I want to know that, because if you're doing over $10,000, I'm going to give you 20 grand. How many of you would tell me, right? A lot of you would tell me, right? So all you have to do is you have to basically explain to them, give them a reason that makes sense as to why you know that answer. So for how many of you guys is this making sense right now? So just to clarify, what we're going to do is we're going to be filling your podcast schedule by going and identifying your dream customers. We're going to go into a Facebook group or a hashtag on Instagram or a LinkedIn group. And we're going to go and try and identify who your dream customers are, so that on the podcast, you can interview them to build a relationship. And then at the end of the interview, you can make them an offer to buy your product or service. So if you've got a $1,000, $2,000 or more, or a high ticket product, this is very, very lucrative. So first of all, you want to identify what traits do your dream customers have. So what is their profession? What is their trait? What is their identity? These 3 aspects are going to allow you to create what we call a bait post. What we want to do is we want to be like the fisherman, and the lake is like the group or the hashtag. We basically want to go and find out where our customers, our dream customers, are congregating, throw in the bait, and we want to attract them by saying something and calling them out based on these 3 aspects. So, hey, entrepreneurs, if this is you, comment down below, right? We want to basically get them to put their hand up and say, yep, this is me. Once we've done that, what we're allowed to do is we've figured out how to call out our dream customer. We know where they're hanging out, so we can go and put a bait post in to get these people to put their hand up. And then from there, we can go and send them an audio message to say, hey, I would love to interview you on my podcast. And the goal is we want to basically create at the top of our podcast funnel here, we want to create a big list of people who we could be interviewing who are our dream customer. Now, once you get a bunch of people saying yes and saying, yeah, you know what, I would love to come on your podcast, that's when we want to start identifying how much of a perfect dream customer are they. And what you guys want to do is you want to create 4 key questions that are going to identify how good of a potential customer they're going to be. So I use my podcast as an example here. So this is, for me, I'm looking for somebody to sell them a podcast, right? I want to help somebody to create a podcast. So my questions usually to identify if they're a perfect customer are you an entrepreneur? Do you currently have a podcast, or do you want to have a podcast? Are you a B2B entrepreneur, or do you sell B2C, which is a little bit harder? And are you doing at least 2K revenue a month? If you tick to all of those, you are a perfect prospect for my methods to show you how to make money. And it works really, really well. So if I can get 4 ticks from somebody that answers that, and I can go and interview 20 of those people who have filled that, then before I even do these interviews, I am almost guaranteeing that I'm going to be speaking to somebody that is a good fit for my product and for my service. So the idea is we want to identify who our dream customers are. We want to put out bait posts to attract them so that they put their hand up. We want to send them an audio message. And then the final thing is we can send them through a booking questionnaire, like an application form for the interview, to answer these 4 questions. And then at the end of that interview, at the end of that application form, we can send them to a Calendly link to book it. Now, you can also, if you want to, you can also just put these questions directly into your Calendly link. And then if for any reason they don't answer enough of these questions, or they're not a good enough prospect, you can always reach out to cancel the interview. Hey, sorry, it's actually a conflict. I actually just looked through your answers and I'm not sure you're a good fit. So you could actually, if you wanted to reduce a step, you can actually put these questions directly into your Calendly booking form. So they book a date that they want to go and get interviewed, and then they answer these questions. So that allows you to filter it. So guys, does that process make sense? How many of you guys, I'm going to have a quick look at questions, see what you guys are saying. This, by the way, is super, super top level stuff, right? We're going a little bit deeper today, a little bit technical, but what this process goes through is this is showing you how you can use the podcast closing strategy that we teach inside of the Podcast Profit Lab. And we're going to show you here, how can you fill up basically your list of prospects that you want to interview. This process is basically showing you, okay, this is how I'm going to fill up my podcast interview prospecting list so that I know that I can sell to the right people in my business. So let's have a look, see what you guys are saying. A couple of people talking about my haircut. So Jeremy's saying parents actually, but points is appropriate. Thank you. Makes sense. So Lindsay asked, is that the JV partner, you and Alex? Yeah. So what I did was I actually reached out on my podcast, not directly to dream customers, but actually to people who have my dream customers in their lists. So I've gone and interviewed people like Alex Elliott, like Austin Dixon, other people we've got lined up who we're interviewing. We're building a relationship so that we can make them an offer so that we can do a joint venture together. Another one, for example, is Catherine Jones, right? We've got a JV coming up with Catherine Jones. Ooh, exciting, huh? You guys are going to love that one when we drop it. So you can use this exact same method to either speak directly to the people you want to sell to, or to speak directly to people who you want to partner with. I mean, you can even focus on people that you want to trade services with. So Brendan Kelly inside of our program said to himself, you know what? I need to go and get a PR person. And instead of just going and paying someone $10,000, he went and interviewed a couple different PR people and then made them an offer to say, hey, I need your services. Looks like you need a funnel. Do you want to swap? And he was able to get $10,000 worth of PR services completely for free using this exact same method. So what did Brendan do? He said, okay, I'm going to go and find a PR person that, first of all, is an entrepreneur. I'm also going to find a PR person that doesn't have a funnel. I'm also going to find a PR person that would benefit from a funnel. And then he went through that kind of checklist in his mind. And once he found a couple of the PR people that fit those criteria, he knew those people were the best people to go and interview so that he could then get someone to trade services. So this process, we call it podcast closing. Very, very simple process. And it's the process of building relationships. And then once you've built a relationship, making people offers. And what I'm showing you guys here is a little bit top level, but what this can show you is how you can basically fill your podcast schedule with people who are your dream customers. This is how you can fill your podcast schedule almost like a prospecting pipeline, right? People that you can sell to. So let's have a look. So Sherry says, I still do not have my core offer down. So Sherry, if your core offer is going to speak to dentists or dental hygienists, you just have to figure out, okay, well, what is going to appeal to them, right? And you have to figure out what is going to be the thing that I can make them as an offer. So Annie says, could you be more specific on how to build the relationship before the offer? Yeah, Annie, the relationship process is actually really easy. You just interview them and you just do your best to get along with them, right? Like ask about them, be genuinely interested, have that conversation, just basically work on rapport, right? Understand about who they are, draw similarities between yourself. The best way to build a great rapport is to ask a lot of questions. If you are talking a lot, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be learning anything about the other person. So what's great about being an interviewer is that you can ask a lot of questions and you can have that art of building rapport and building relationships. If you've ever read, what's the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, the art of conversation is listening. And what you're able to do is basically ask questions about them, about their story. How did you get started? What were some of the struggles you went through? Oh my God, I've been through similar struggles myself. It's crazy, right? What's your mission? Oh, I love that mission. That makes a lot of sense to me because of this story, right? You can draw connections between you and between them based on what they're telling you and what their stories are. And what's nice about an interview is that it's not a sales conversation. They're not expecting you to sell to them. So there's no wall. They're not guarded. They're not protecting themselves. They're going to be open and share their story with you 9 times out of 10. And all you have to do is listen and ask the right questions and draw similarities and connections between you and between them. And that is kind of the art of doing it. Hopefully that answers your question. So Sherry says, I realized listening to you that I don't want to sell to dental hygienists. I want to help parents. I've been having an internal struggle on my who, what I have been doing and what I want to do. Yeah, Sherry, you have to really identify, like, who do I want to spend all of my time with? Like, as a dream customer, you guys, entrepreneurs, are my dream customer because I just love hanging out with you. Like, this is fun for me to be on a Facebook Live and just be chatting away to you guys because I love spending time with you and helping you figure out your problems. I used to sell to dentists, and Sherry, you know this, like, dentists do not like marketers, right? So I would have a real hard time speaking them to every day. So Sherry, what I would say for you is for identifying your dream customer, you just have to ask yourself, like, who do I want to spend all my time with? And more times than not, your dream customer is usually you, but 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months ago, maybe even a year ago or 2 years ago. Usually your dream customer is you, but a couple of steps back. So maybe, Sherry, your dream customer is someone who is a parent who's trying to become an entrepreneur because that's exactly what you're trying to do, right? Maybe it's a dental hygienist or someone that's come from that profession who is now looking to create their own business, right? What are the challenges they've gone through? What are the struggles? What are the stories that have happened in your life that you can reflect back to them that they can relate to, right? And this is what's great about a podcast is that you can tell stories about your own journey. And this is what's cool about this. Like when I'm speaking to you guys and I'm talking about my entrepreneurial journey, figuring these pieces out, I'm just a couple steps ahead of you, right? But I'm not making this up. I'm just documenting the process that we've been through. I don't have to create anything. I just have to tell stories about my own experiences. And what that does is that attracts people who are just like me 6 months, a year ago, even longer ago, that want to go through this process. Does that make sense? So actually identifying your who, actually sometimes we overcomplicate it. It's usually just you, but a couple months ago. And you just have to think about, like, who do I want to spend all my time with? And don't be scared. You know, if you're in a position where you're looking at your product and you're like, man, this product is not where I want to be. I don't want to be serving these people. Don't be scared to give yourself permission to change. Because let me tell you right now, it is a lot easier to change when you don't have any customers than it is to change
when you have a lot of customers and you're used to that money coming in and you're relying on the money. So the best time to change is now, before you have success. Very, very important. So Annie says, wow, these 4 tick boxes are amazing to define the who. Heard an explosion in my head. Awesome. This was cool. This just came back from the top of my head, but it's a really cool way that we were able to do it with a spreadsheet, right? Just having those tick boxes. I hear you. What an amazing moment of realization. Cool. I'm so glad I joined your group. Thank you, Jamie. I love the way you explain things. Awesome, Sherry. Hopefully this is helping you guys to understand. So I'll watch the replay after work. Love this. All right. Awesome, Sherry. We're super glad to have you. Explain the reason behind the question. Sounds like a question can be warm versus cold. 100%. A warm question is one that explains the reason, or a cold question is one that has no reason shared. Exactly. It's a bit like saying, walking up to a lady and saying, how old are you? Right? That's a cold question, because they're going to rip your head off because they say, you should never ask a lady her age, right? They're going to get really upset. But if you say to people, hey, I want to know how old you are because you look like you're under 25, or you give them a compliment or something like that, they're going to go, woo, right? And it's going to be a warm approach to it. So think about how you can ask a warm question versus a cold question. Lindsay, really great way to put that. I love that. Sarin, hey Sarin, yeah, I cut my hair. Everybody seems to notice. That's cool. Hey Sarin, right, I said the same thing. It looks nice. I hate that I missed the front part. Need to catch up later. Yeah, no worries. I'm going to do a quick recap in a second. Yeah, I don't really like my hair. I missed the blonde in it, but we'll figure that out. So let's have a look. Really true. I learn more listening than talking during the interview. Build rapport, paraphrase what they said, reflect it back. Very powerful. So Jeremy's asking, how do you want to help parents? With what challenges? Let's chat when you're available, as I'm in a similar space. Helping parents build rapport. Oh yeah, so Jeremy's talking to Sherry here saying, hey, maybe we can collaborate. I like that. So, okay, give yourself permission to change. #live. Hey Susan, have to catch the replay. This is a huge and very important. Okay guys, so just to recap what we've gone through today, what we covered is how can you fill your podcast schedule, but not just with anybody. How can you fill it with your dream customers? And Susan, you're going to love this, because this is something we were talking about on a live call last week, and I've just summarized it into a whole training. So you're going to love this. So first, what we want to do, this is an outline of what our podcast looks like. We're going to interview our dream customers so that we can interview them to build a relationship. And then once we've built a relationship, we can make them an offer so we can sell them our product, assuming it's $1,000 or more, right? That's the process that we're putting them through for the podcast. Now, what we want to do is we first want to outline who is that dream customer and how can we get them to put their hand up in a group, or how can we get them to identify themselves? So these are the 3 things you can use to identify someone. You can identify them by their profession, you can identify them by a trait, or you can identify them by an identity. So an identity would be a funnel hacker or a change maker, right? That's an identity. A trait might be Spanish speaking, or a trait might be, I don't know, another thing. And then you can identify them by their profession as well. And I drew this little diagram. This circle here is a lake. And I want you to imagine that you are the fisherman and you're throwing in your hook with a certain type of bait on it to attract a certain type of fish. Except in this situation, the lake is either a Facebook group, an Instagram hashtag, or a LinkedIn page or a post. And basically, this lake is where all of your dream customers are congregating. But there's a ton of different types of fish. There's a ton of different types of customers in here. So what kind of bait do you put in that attracts just your dream fish, just your dream customer? So you want to use a bait post that actually talks about one of these 3 things. So for example, I might put a post in there that calls out entrepreneurs. Hey, entrepreneurs, I've got an amazing top 100 podcast and I want to interview you on it. Comment and tell me your stories down below. That would be a great way, using a profession to call out my dream customer. For example, another thing might be if you want to identify Spanish speakers or somebody that is eco-conscious. You could say, where are my eco warriors, or where are my eco entrepreneurs? Comment down below. I would love to interview you on my podcast, or I would love to connect with you guys more because you are my people, right? Think about what kind of bait can you throw into your lake that's going to attract your dream customer to you. Think of it like you are a fisherman. So what you want to do is, first of all, you want to figure out, okay, how can I call out my dream customer through using those 3 aspects? How can I then get them to, first of all, where are they hanging out? Sorry, not how to. So call out your dream customer. What can you do to call them out? Figure out where are they hanging out in the big ocean. So I gave you an example before of Rachel, right? She wants to serve athletes turned entrepreneurs, but there is no group with athletes entrepreneurs in. There's nothing that specific. So what she has to do is she knows that they're maybe hanging out in bigger entrepreneur groups. So she knows they're hanging out in there. She just has to figure out how to get them to put their hand up and say, yes, I'm an athlete turned entrepreneur. So how could she do that? She puts out a bait post that says, where are my athletes / entrepreneurs, right? Getting something out there to get them to put their hand up. Then once they put their hand up, you guys can put them into a spreadsheet. You can reach out to them via an audio message and say, hey, what's up? My name's Jamie. I'm the host of the Entrepreneur Junkie Movement podcast. I would love to interview you on my show. I think you're an amazing expert in this space. Let me know if you would like to hang out. And you can send them a message. And what we're doing here is this very top section of the funnel, where is our dream customers for our podcast. We're filling this up with potential people, right? So we might have a list of 30 people who are going to be a potential person that we might interview on our podcast. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put them through some criteria. We're going to say, okay, in this little spreadsheet, I'm going to make sure that this person ticks all the boxes of what is a perfect customer for me. So we gave the example of me, my perfect customer. My perfect customer is going to be an entrepreneur. They're going to either have a podcast or want to have a podcast. They're maybe going to be a B2B entrepreneur, and they're going to be doing at least 2K of revenue a month. If somebody fits all 4 of those tick boxes, we're going to assign them a score of 100%, 75 or 50. The higher the percentage, the better chance that they are going to say yes when I make them an offer. Does that make sense? So how do we get them to tell us those questions? Well, you can go and do research on it and figure it out yourself just by looking at their profile, their website, their pages, or you can actually ask them questions when they book the appointment. So you can either put them through an application form with 4 questions, or you can just send them to a Calendly booking link and you get them to answer those questions when they book the interview. And if for any reason they're like a 0, like they don't fit any of those criteria, you can always reach out to them and say, hey, sorry, the time's not good. You're not a good fit to do the interview. Sorry about that. Reach back out when you're one of these 4 things. And that's the way that you guys can do it. So what we're doing is we're identifying who our dream customer is. We're figuring out what bait can we throw into our lake so that we can attract them and get them to put their hands up. Then once they've commented on those posts inside of these groups, we're then going to send them an audio message inviting them to come onto the podcast. And maybe we're going to put them into a spreadsheet. And then we're going to send them through a questionnaire to identify how much of a good prospect are they. And what you guys want to do is you want to be interviewing the people that are the better prospects straight away, right? The people who are 100%, you want to get them on the podcast interviews ASAP, because you can build a connection with them, build a relationship, and then make them an offer. Now, just because they're 100% doesn't mean they're always going to say yes, but they are much more likely to say yes than somebody that doesn't. So guys, that's the process. By doing this, you can do this once a month. You can do it every couple of months. Like I said, if you find the right kind of group and if you're able to call out your audience effectively with this bait post, you can sometimes get hundreds of people commenting and putting their hands up. And then it's really about how much you want to filter that process. How deep and how filtered do you want to get them so that you can speak to that perfect customer? Is this making sense? Is this useful for you guys? So this is the exact process of if I was you right now and you had launched your podcast and you were trying to say, how can I use podcast closing to make me money? This is what I would do. I would be filtering from the top, getting basically a bunch of dream customers queued up so that you can speak to them specifically. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see what you guys are saying. Let's have a quick look. Susan says, woohoo. Lindsay says, change maker. All about the games we play and the stories we tell. Jeremy, 100%, that's part of my mission. It's so simple. This is how to do it. This is great. Do your tick boxes go in order? Like if they're an entrepreneur but don't have a podcast, are they not interested, but they hit B2B and they make money? Yeah, so I would do this as like, maybe if they're not an entrepreneur, right? They're not going to be a B2B person and they're not going to be making revenue, right? So if the only tick box they have is they have a podcast, that's probably not going to be a great prospect for me. They might still be okay, but not fantastic. So it's up to you as to what you assign the value, but I would just keep it simple and have like 25, 50, 75, and 100. If it's 100%, then they've ticked all the boxes. If it's 75%, all you need to do is have a look through and see which tick box they don't have, right? Very, very simple to set up in a spreadsheet. So, if you're reaching out and you've got 5 people who are 75%, you can go through and look, and maybe they're entrepreneur podcast and B2B, and then entrepreneur podcast and 2K revenue and B2C. So it's up to you to decide then, okay, is that a great prospect? Do I want to reach out to them? Or do I go and filter and try and find somebody better? But what's nice about this is that because it's all on a spreadsheet and it's just tick boxes, it's very, very easy at a glance to figure out exactly whether this is going to be a good person for you to go and interview. So was that helpful? Any big takeaways? So guys, if you had any takeaways, give me a hashtag takeaway down below so that people who are catching us on the replay can see and understand what some of the big takeaways were. My goal for today's training was to help to show you guys a couple of things. I wanted to help you to understand how to basically go out and get as many different people queued up to be on your podcast as an interviewee as possible. And then my next goal was to help you guys be able to actually fill your podcast calendar with your dream customers. And from there, I wanted to show you how you can identify them so you have the best chance of selling to them. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you guys had some good takeaways. Let's have a quick look. So Susan says another way to say that would be if they are the first box but not the second, do you stop there and they are not a dream customer? It just depends, right? Sometimes they might be, they might have these three things, but they're not an entrepreneur, right? Maybe they work in a B2B business. Maybe they have a podcast themselves. Maybe they're doing 100K worth of revenue, and maybe they would still be a good fit, even though they're not technically an entrepreneur. So you just have to take it on a case-by-case basis. So guys, let me know your hashtag takeaways down below. Thank you so much. Make sure to stay in the group. We've got a bunch of cool and awesome things going. Next Thursday, we're going to have another training. So always feel free to let me know if you've got any questions or if there's anything specific that you guys want to learn about. But as always, make sure you guys are going out and killing it. Make sure you guys are using podcast closing in your business, and make sure you guys are finding your voice so you can create change as a change maker. Thanks so much, guys. Love you lots, and we'll see you guys in the group soon.